Winter is a really hard time for our resident birds, the ones that don't migrate, the ones that stay here. So what we can do is help our birds, and I know a lot of you are already feeding birds in the winter time, but in this video we are just going to talk about all the things we can do to help our bluebirds, because a lot of them don't migrate. Unless you're in the far north, a lot of them are here on the regular all winter long. And just to put some context out there when it comes to bluebirds, I've seen some really bad winters. I've seen bluebird monitors report seeing dead birds in the boxes come wintertime, and they inspect them too, and they can tell that they were lacking food. They froze overnight because they couldn't keep their metabolism up. So things get really hard. So let's talk about some things we can do to help them get through the winter. To start off, I mentioned food, and this is a great place to start. A lot of the bluebird's diet is insects during the nesting season. The problem with winter is as the ground freezes, so do the insects. So there's just not a lot of that kind of food available. They will switch their diet to berries and maybe some seed, but mostly berries. But again, this can be hard to come by. So supplementing food is a great first step. And I know you're probably putting out mealworms already, but during wintertime, what you really want is dried mealworms. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because if you've been using live mealworms, it sounds like it's healthier. But the upside with dried mealworms is they don't freeze. So that's benefit number one. Benefit number two is that they are packed with more protein and fat because of how the freeze-dry process takes place. It concentrates those into the mealworms a lot more. So this is actually really beneficial for them. And in the wintertime, bluebirds are so desperate for food anyway, so they're not going to be picky and go, oh, well, you gave me dried mealworms and I only like live. A lot of times they're going to take what they're given. I do have a video about live versus dried mealworms. It's kind of dense, but it goes into a lot more detail about when you should choose live mealworms, when you should choose dried. The other thing is there's suet, and there's also the bluebird banquet, which I'll have the recipe. It's a well-known recipe, and I'll have that in the description for you. A challenge to bluebird banquet and suet is this can attract starlings, which are invasive, and they are known to fatally attack a lot of our native birds. So what you can do about that is do timed feeding. So maybe only at certain times of the day you're putting the suet out, and then you take it back in, or you only put enough out that your resident birds who know your yard will eat it all, and then it's done. The next thing is water. Having fresh water is such a benefit, and if you have that in your yard, come wintertime especially, you will be a really popular bird yard. But the thing about winter is as those temperatures hit below freezing, what happens to water? It becomes ice. So it's not readily available for birds. If snow is available, they'll eat snow, but then that also takes a toll on their metabolism, and they need all of that energy that they've stored to help keep them going. That fat is really important for them to just, not freeze, especially overnight. So what you'll want is a clean bird bath, something shallow too. You don't want to fill it too much. All they need to do is drink. The reason you want to keep it pretty shallow too is if they get it on their feathers, sometimes it can form ice and make it a lot harder to fly. So keep a very shallow bird bath, make sure it's clean, have a bird bath heater in there too so the water is liquid and not ice, and you'll be taking great care of your bluebirds. You'll be seeing them come to your bird bath all the time in the winter. The next thing is nest boxes, and you can take them down, but there is a benefit to leaving them up. These can become great roost sites for your bluebirds, or even other visitors like downy woodpeckers sometimes go and camp out in the nest boxes too. But you do want to make sure that you're monitoring these nest boxes. I have been relaxed in the winter sometimes, especially because it's hard, or I've taken a vacation over the holiday and it's, I can't really monitor in that situation. The problem is house sparrows and starlings and Eurasian tree sparrows are still aggressive, especially if there's one of those random winter thaws that happen where it's like unseasonably warm weather. All of a sudden they get really crazy. So you want to make sure you're monitoring your nest boxes and checking the health of the birds too. So if you have the cameras in there, see how they look. Are they looking skinny? Are you seeing kind of the bones showing? If so, they're not getting enough food. So, that kind of tells you about the health of the bird. Another thing about nest boxes is winterizing them. So you can put some pine needles inside to help insulate, and then also cover up the vent holes. That will help keep the cold air out. Hey, just really quick, I want to take a moment and pin this to the video in order to, yes, plug this educational coloring book. I have spent a year working on doing the illustrations, writing up all the information, but this book is all about caring for and hosting bluebirds, and it's pretty comprehensive too. I've set it up so you can color on one page and read about the topic on the other page. And the hope with this is that you could just relax, color, enjoy it, and then engage with the information too. You can find it on Amazon, and I'll also have a link to it in this video's description. Another great thing for taking care of bluebirds and other birds in the wintertime is having windbreaks. One way you can do that is just having covered feeders available. Other options are to have feeders in kind of dense areas, so that way there's cover from branches and bushes and stuff like that. Also, brush piles are a great way to provide windbreaks, and you can make a brush pile really easily. If you're trimming bushes and stuff, don't just put that out for yard waste pickup. Put that in an area of your yard and just start adding to it. The next thing is planting native plants that feed your birds in the wintertime. So a list of native plants that you should look into are eastern red cedars. These are really aggressive plants. Some people really hate them. The reason I love eastern red cedar, though, is because not only do they provide food, and yes, bluebirds eat eastern red cedar berries, which aren't really berries, but they're also evergreen, and they're one of the few native evergreens, at least in the Midwest area. So the upside here is that when you have an evergreen plant, there's more cover to hide from predators, but there's also more foliage to protect from the wind and cold and to insulate these roosting birds. Winterberry is another great plant. You do need a male and a female winterberry plant. American holly is another great native plant that berries late, and those berries provide food. Sumac species are another great one. It seems like a lot of birds don't love sumac, but then they end up switching to it when there's nothing left. Arrowwood viburnum is another good one, and that one berries more in like well, it berries, but it ripens in the late fall and somewhat into winter, unless your birds have eaten them all. But that's a great native plant too. Also, the Audubon has a tool for finding plants for specific birds. You would just have to do a little bit of research there to find out when it fruits to see if that's a good one for wintertime. Another thing is just in preparing for the winter, having the number to a local rehabber handy, or just knowing if you have a local rehabber available, because things can happen. You may find an injured bird, you may find a bird that's very cold. So having that readily available, or at least again in the back of your head, so that way you know what to do, is really helpful, especially come winter time. This is a great way to start helping your bluebirds survive the winter, but this isn't an exhaustive list either. So if you have some other suggestions, put it in the comments as well.